They called it Rodina, Motherland. It wasn't the biggest or the most high-tech, but it rolled off the line by the tens of thousands and changed the course of World War II. This is the story of the T-34, the tank that crushed empires, one muddy battlefield at a time. One of the big four tanks of World War II, alongside the German Tiger, Panther, and Panzer IV, this Soviet beast left a massive mark in the history of armored warfare. But believe it or not, the Soviet Union of the 1930s didn't really have its act together when it came to tanks. Back then, their most advanced design was the BT-7, a so-called fast tank that operated more like a glorified armored car designed to sprint ahead with infantry in rapid assaults. To be fair, the BT-7 wasn't a total disaster. In battles like Lake Khasan and Khalkhin Gol, it absolutely steamrolled Japanese tanks, which frankly were about as durable as soda cans. But in that same period, over in Spain, BT-7s were getting shredded by German 37mm POC-36 anti-tank guns. That was a wake-up call for Soviet tank developers. They had a big question to answer. Do we build an entirely new tank or just upgrade what we've got? That kicked off two major development paths. The heavy tank line, starting with the SMK prototype and leading to the KV-1. The medium tank line, evolving the BT-7 into the A-20 and A-32, and eventually the T-34. At first, the A-32, a beefed-up BT-7 with a 76mm gun, looked promising. But the Winter War with Finland proved it just wasn't enough, so they upped the armor again and created the A-34. After successful trials, it got its official name, the T-34. But things didn't go smoothly. Marshal Grigory Kulik, a high-ranking Stalin loyalist, hated the T-34. Not because it was bad, but because it used a 76.2mm gun, which he claimed was too weak. Plus, the project was led by his political rival, Koshkin. Clearly, it wasn't just about the tank. Politics and ego played a big role. In 1940, the Soviets even imported two German Panzer III tanks. After comparison, they found that aside from firepower and armor, the T-34 lagged behind in nearly every category. Engine reliability, crew ergonomics, radios, you name it. Kulik had a field day trashing the project. Meanwhile, lead designer Mikhail Koshkin literally worked himself to death. The original 1940 production goal of 600 tanks was slashed to just 117. Only after Alexander Morozov took over in 1941 did production finally ramp up. So, what made the T-34-76 such a game-changer? Let's break down its final specs. It was about 6.7 meters long, 3 meters wide, and stood 2.45 meters tall. Weighing in at 26.5 tons, it was operated by a crew of 4, a commander, a gunner, a driver, and a radio operator. Under the hood, it packed a 500 horsepower V2 diesel engine, giving it a top speed of 55 kilometers per hour and a range of up to 400 kilometers. Its main punch came from a 76.2mm F-34 gun, backed by two 7.62mm DT machine guns. And thanks to its 60-degree sloped frontal armor, the protection was effectively doubled, making it a nightmare to take down. Thanks to its light tank origins, the T-34 was relatively simple to mass produce. By the time Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, over 1,200 had already been built. But wait, didn't the Germans still steamroll them early on? Yep. Even with solid hardware, the Soviet army was in complete disarray. Thanks to Stalin's purges, the command structure had regressed to World War I levels. No amount of tanks could make up for that kind of leadership failure. Then came one of Stalin's wildest, but oddly brilliant moves. Mobilize everyone into emergency divisions and move all major factories east of the Urals. Couldn't move the factory in time? Keep building tanks until the enemy kicked the doors in. Imagine telling Detroit to pack up and rebuild its factories 1,000 miles away. Overnight, total madness. But somehow it worked. Once U.S. Lend-Lease aid kicked in by 1942, those relocated factories went into overdrive. Now get this, when it comes to production, the numbers are just wild. In 1940, the Soviets rolled out only 117 T-34s. But by 1941, that number shot up to nearly 3,000. In 1942, they cranked out over 12,500. And by 1943, more than 15,800 rolled off the assembly lines. An absolutely insane ramp-up, nothing short of industrial warfare. The Germans were horrified. That 60-degree sloped armor effectively doubled its thickness. German short-barreled 75mm guns, standard on Panzer IVs, might as well have been paintball guns. Mechanically, the T-34 was simple and rugged. Soviet farmhands who had driven tractors could be trained to drive them. Not a joke. But being easy to drive didn't mean it was perfect. Early models had serious flaws. The gun, inaccurate. The shells, sometimes bounced off targets. Radios, rare and unreliable. Driver hatch, slapped right on the front hull like a giant "shoot here" sign. Still, by 1942, upgrades began to fix some of these problems. But then Germany rolled out the Tiger and Panther tanks, monsters with thick armor and heavy guns. The T-3476 was now officially outgunned. So in 1943, the Soviets launched an upgrade. Enter the T-3485. Instead of designing an entirely new tank, they enlarged the turret, fit in a proper 3-man crew, and mounted an 85mm ZIS S-53 gun. The result? Better crew efficiency, improved radios, slightly better mobility, still cheap and fast to produce. And it worked. 22,500 T-3485s rolled out in just 2 years. Germany? Only about 5,000 Panthers in the same time frame, different leagues entirely. The 85mm gun wasn't quite as powerful as the Tiger's 88, but it came close, comparable to the German Pak-40 and deadly in the right hands. The Soviets finally had both numbers and firepower. In pure production terms, Germany simply couldn't keep up. Even if a Tiger took out 10 T-34s, losing that one Tiger was still a disaster. And now the Soviets had IS-2s backing them up with monstrous 122mm guns. From Germany's perspective, game over. By the end of the war, the T-34 was everything the Soviets needed. Rugged, efficient, and absurdly mass-produced. Over 58,600 were built during World War II alone, with over 90,000 total, including a post-war production. This tank didn't just hold the line, it steamrolled across Eastern Europe and helped win the war. Soviet crews even gave it a nickname, Rodina, Motherland. And what happened to Marshal Kulik, the man who hated the T-34? Oh, he kept making calls like, submachine guns waste ammo. Landmines are pointless. In 1941, the Germans crushed his unit. He barely escaped, got demoted, disgraced, and eventually was caught bad-mouthing Stalin over the phone. Exiled to Siberia. Died there. Bottom line, even the best weapons are worthless without the right timing, leadership, and production scale. Just look at how we handled the Sherman. It may have been technically better in some areas, but outdated doctrine meant early models were stuck with underpowered 75mm guns. By the time the US upgraded to 76mm, it was too late, and they lost effectiveness against infantry in the process. No wonder the Germans called it the Ronson Lighter, because it lit up after just one hit. Because in the end, wars aren't won on paper, they're won in the mud.